It was a bitter winter night, the kind where the wind cuts through even the thickest coat and city lights blur into a mist of fog and loneliness. The streets had thinned of hurried shoppers and commuters, leaving behind only the echo of shoes against pavement and the hum of passing cars. Inside a sleek black SUV, nestled in the warmth of leather seats and quiet classical music, 6-year-old Emma stared out the frosted window. Her wide, innocent eyes followed the drifting snowflakes as her father, Nathaniel Hayes, drove them home from yet another charity gala. Nathaniel was a man of immense wealth, the kind of man newspapers often called a self-made millionaire. Though his fortune came with sacrifices no headline ever told. His wife had passed years ago, leaving him both a father and a mother to Emma, a role he had embraced but never quite mastered. Emma's little voice broke the silence. "Daddy," she said softly, almost hesitantly. "Yes, sweetheart." Nathaniel answered, adjusting his grip on the steering wheel, her finger pressed against the glass. "Why is she sleeping there?" Nathaniel followed his daughter's gaze. On the corner, just beyond the glow of a flickering street lamp, sat a young woman huddled against a building, her arms wrapped tightly around a bundled infant. She had no blanket, just a thin coat that clung to her trembling frame. The baby's cries were faint, swallowed by the wind. Nathaniel's chest tightened. In his world of deals, penthouses, and high society, scenes like this were too often invisible. Yet in Emma's voice, there was no judgment, only pure bewilderment, as if her mind could not understand why anyone would be left outside in the cold. Nathaniel hesitated. The truth that life was unfair, cruel even, was too heavy for a child's heart. "She doesn't have a home, Emma." Emma's lips quivered. "But babies are supposed to sleep in warm beds like me. Can't we help them?" Her question struck him harder than any business negotiation ever could. He could ignore poverty when it was numbers on a page, but not when his daughter's wide eyes pleaded for an answer. Not when a baby lay crying in the snow. Before he realized it, he had pulled the car over. Emma's face lit with hope as he stepped out into the night, the icy air biting his skin. He approached the young woman cautiously, not wanting to frighten her. "Miss?" His voice was steady, gentle. The woman looked up, her eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. She clutched her baby tighter. "I'm fine," she whispered hoarsely, though the shivering in her body betrayed her words. "No, you're not," Nathaniel replied firmly but kindly. "You and your baby can't stay out here. Please let me help." She shook her head quickly, panic flashing in her eyes. "I don't need charity. I just need a little time. Please." Nathaniel noticed her knuckles, scraped raw, and the way she tried to shield her child from the wind with her own body. He glanced back at his SUV, where Emma was watching with a mixture of worry and hope. "It's not charity," he said softly. "It's humanity. My daughter asked why you were out here, and I don't have an answer I can live with. Come with us, just for tonight, for your baby." The woman's lips trembled, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then the baby whimpered, and her resolve crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded faintly. Nathaniel helped her to the car, opening the door where Emma's smile beamed like a sunrise. "Hi," Emma said sweetly. "I'm Emma, your baby's so tiny." The woman lowered herself into the seat, cradling her infant close. "Her name is Lily," she whispered, "and I'm Grace." As the car warmed around them, Grace's eyes fluttered shut with exhaustion. Emma leaned toward her father, whispering, "See, Daddy, we helped." Nathaniel squeezed her hand. "Yes, sweetheart, we did." That night, Grace and Lily slept in a guest room of Nathaniel's sprawling home, wrapped in soft blankets and surrounded by warmth. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, Grace's body let go of its constant tension. She woke the next morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of Emma's giggles echoing down the hall. She emerged shyly, her clothes worn and ill-fitting, her hair tangled. Nathaniel looked up from the dining table, where Emma was pouring far too much syrup on her pancakes. "Good morning," he greeted gently. Grace blushed, clutching Lily to her chest. I should go. You've already done more than I could ever repay." "Stay," Nathaniel said simply. "At least until you've had breakfast." Over pancakes and coffee, fragments of Grace's story came spilling out. She had once worked as a nurse's aide, but when Lily's father abandoned them, her life spiraled. Bills piled up, rent slipped behind, and with no family to turn to, she found herself on the street, doing everything she could to protect her baby. Nathaniel listened, his jaw tight. He was a man used to solving problems with money, but this was deeper than that. This was about dignity, about the cruel way society overlooked its most vulnerable. "Grace," he said finally, "you don't have to go back out there. You can. Stay here at least until you're back on your feet." Her eyes widened, her instinct to refuse immediate. "I can't. This is your home. I don't belong here." Emma reached across the table, her little hand touching Grace's. "You do now," she said innocently, "and Lily too." Grace's tears fell silently as she nodded, whispering a thank you so quiet it was almost lost in the clatter of dishes. Days turned into weeks. Grace helped around the house, cooking simple meals, folding laundry, and most of all, filling a void Emma hadn't even realized was there. Emma adored Lily, spending hours making faces at her tiny giggles. Nathaniel often found himself watching them, a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt since before his wife's passing. But not everything was easy. Grace carried wounds deeper than Nathaniel could see. Nights were hardest, hearing her muffled sobs through the walls as she battled fear, shame, and the haunting question of whether she deserved this second chance. One evening, as Nathaniel worked late in his study, he found Grace standing in the kitchen, staring blankly out the window. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I keep waiting to wake up, to find out this was just a dream. People like me don't get saved by people like you." Nathaniel's heart twisted. He stepped closer, his voice low and sincere. "Grace, you're not a charity case. You're a mother doing everything you can for her child. That's strength. And my daughter, she already loves you. So do I, if I'm honest. You've brought something into this house I thought I lost forever." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't only from pain. For the first time, she let herself believe she might belong. The months that followed weren't without challenges. Grace struggled with finding work, her confidence battered. Nathaniel wrestled with balancing his business empire and his growing attachment to Grace and Lily. There were misunderstandings, moments of doubt, and nights when Grace almost packed her things to leave. But every time, Emma's small voice anchored them. "We're a family," she would say simply, as though it were the most obvious truth in the world, and slowly, piece by piece, they built something stronger than circumstance. Grace found work again, part-time at first, while Nathaniel made room in his life not just for her, but for the hope she represented. He wasn't just a provider anymore. He was a man learning to love again. On a spring afternoon, as the sun poured golden light into the garden, Emma tugged at Nathaniel's hand. "Daddy, look!" she exclaimed. Grace sat on the grass laughing, as Lily toddled toward her for the very first time. The sound of their laughter filled the air, richer than any music Nathaniel had ever heard. In that moment, Nathaniel realized something. His fortune, his mansion, his success, it all meant nothing compared to this, compared to the sight of a young mother finding her strength, a baby finding her first steps, and a little girl finding the family she had wished for without even knowing it. That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, she whispered, "Daddy, remember when I asked why she was sleeping outside?" "Yes, sweetheart," he said, brushing her hair back. Emma smiled drowsily. "I think maybe—" She was waiting. "For us." Nathaniel's throat tightened, and he kissed her forehead. "Maybe you're right." And so, a chance encounter on a cold winter night became the beginning of something no one had expected. A story of compassion that turned strangers into family. Because sometimes the smallest question from the purest heart, "Daddy, why is she sleeping here?" can change everything. And sometimes the greatest riches aren't the ones locked away in bank vaults or measured in dollars. They are found in second chances, in kindness offered freely, and in the family we choose to build when life gives us the courage to open our doors.